So I think we can get started. Cool. All right. Warm welcome again to our Technology Game Changer series. It's my privilege to be hosting an eminent panel like you. So as far as 5G is concerned, around 70 countries had 5G network as of June 2022, up from just 38 in the mid 2020s. Approximately 15 more have 5G mobile deployed in part in the recent past. It is expected that 5G will reach about 1 billion users this year, after just in 3.5 years in use, compared to the 4 years for 4G and 12 years for 3G. As you all are aware, the government of India would officially launch 5G at the inauguration of the IMC, the India Mobile Congress, on the 29th of September 2022. Industry experts believe that technological innovation with 5G will redefine the future of telecom in India and throw open a slew of opportunities across industries like healthcare, education, fintech, e-commerce, entertainment, etc. While there are opportunities, we're sure there will be a lot of challenges that will come along with that as well. So we'd like to, kind of hear from the experts here who are present in terms of what those opportunities are and what those challenges could be and how those challenges could be dealt with, right? So to lead this, discussion, we have Professor Lal. He's no stranger. He is a professor at the IIT Delhi. Professor Lal is presently working in the electrical engineering department and has earlier served as the head of Bharti School of Telecom Technology and Management at IIT Delhi. And also the coordinator of 2 Center of Excellences, Airtel IIT Delhi Center of Excellence in Telecommunication and Ericsson IIT Delhi 5G Center of Excellence. Professor Lal has recently successfully completed his assignment as co-project in charge for the project, build an end-to-end 5G testbed funded by the DOT. Professor is currently IIT Delhi principal investigator for METI, 5G and beyond projects, and is directing a research team of 6 faculty and 27 research scholars working in different domains, including areas of security, low latency, multi-access computing, and haptics. Other research domains the professor is working on include haptics, signal processing and analysis, super resolution of hyperspectral imaging, single view depth estimation, artificial video synthesis using computer vision, and semantic representation of objects in media streams, AI, ML, and IoT. He's mentored multiple startups in the areas of virtualization, geofencing, UAV-based solutions, and recommendations and data mining. He actively participates in building and deploying technology. He also serves as an expert in numerous government and private agencies in aspects related to signal processing. Professor completed his PhD in the year 1999 from IIT Delhi in the area of multi-rate signal processing. He joined Hughes Software for about 8 years and came back to join, IIT Delhi. Over to you, Professor. Just before that, this is a closed room session, so you can really be vocal about what you're saying here. This session is, however, being recorded. A copy of it will be shared with you. Whatever you speak will be attributed to you as an individual if there's a challenge in being attributed to you with your title and the organization. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Avinash, for those kind words. So the reason all of this interests me is I essentially a signal processing person, and I want to see India grow, evolve, become the powerhouse that it has the potential to be. And therefore, some of the things that Avinash mentioned is what I take interest in. About today's panel, I'll just quickly brief about what we are going to talk about and then request the panelists to introduce themselves. So we're talking about a very, very important topic, which is the 5G rollout and expediting India's dream for digital transformation, because 5G has been shown to us, brought out as something with a lot of potential, which it certainly has. But along with the opportunities come extremely hard challenges that need to be surmounted. Not least of which is availability of talent, people willing to contribute in this relatively tough space. And while the technology and deployment and user use case based challenges continue to exist, you already have 6G knocking on the door. So a lot of talent is already trying to make contributions to 6G. And more than the deployment challenges themselves, 6G also seems to pose some challenges because it's easy to move something to the next generation. So given all-round challenges to a technology which has a lot of potential, a technology which has changed the way you communicate with respect to how the other generations evolved, it is an opportunity that one should not let go of. So how does one overcome these challenges, and what is so specific about India that makes it possibly more challenging, or does it make it easier for the 5G community to be able to make its services available to the general population at large? So with that short introduction, I think we should start with a brief about each of the panelists. Each one of them is an eminent contributor in their own space and a key member of their organization. But as Avinash clearly pointed out, today what they present are their personal opinion and need not necessarily be aligned with the position of the organization. So that is how you should interpret the comments that they make. So let's have a quick round of introductions, Avinash, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So we can probably start with Ankur Chauhan.
Thank you, Avinash, and thank you, Professor Tal, for the great introduction. And I totally agree. I totally agree from that aspect. So before starting that, I am Ankur Chauhan, and I am Director of Standards in Rakuten right now. And I have been interacting with some of you during my Airtel days, especially Professor Lal during the Airtel Center of Excellence days. So in country like India, why I'm so much excited is country like India, where there is so much diversity in terms of social economy, status, and that kind of a diversity. The connectivity at a large provides the uniformity. If the technology can be provided at a sustainable rate, then it provides a reasonable uniformity, and the suite of that technology can be enjoyed by everybody. We have seen that in the COVID time that has just recently passed, and especially the students, those who couldn't go to school at the different part of the country, they also benefited by the technology. And luckily, in the 4G space, because that 4G connections were available just before the pandemic, students could still continue with their study. And I feel 5G coming forward is going to be especially useful for a country like ours, where there is so much diversity. The strong fabric of connectivity can really help to provide the uniformity across different sectors, the different social, economy, geographical distances, whatever we have in reality. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Alphabetically, I guess, Buland, we can probably go with you next.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks a lot. And my apologies, I joined, but I was struggling with my Zoom. So anyways, let me start with a quick introduction. So first of all, thanks for hosting me, everyone. And so I'm Buland Khan with over 2 decades of experience. And I'm also a distinguished member of technical staff at Wipro. I am currently the chief technologist at Wipro, and the current focus is to drive innovation charter in some of the large accounts. I also lead the CTO initiatives for 5G and edge computing at Wipro, right? So as part of my charter, I'm kind of responsible to create integrated platform solutions, develop some of these strong ecosystem and partnership, because what we're seeing is 5G is going to be an ecosystem play, right? I'm also responsible to look at some of the COEs which we are coming up with, and also build some of the 5G and edge computing solutions, focus a lot on use cases. So me and my team also interact and work with a lot of customers in the space, analysts, standards bodies, open source forums, and specifically around, I work around the multi-access edge computing area. I think I have interacted earlier with Dr. Lal, and especially during the DOT hackathon, right, where we had submitted 6 ideas, got shortlisted. We were in the top 4, and now we are in the top 2. So yeah, good to see you again, Dr. Lal. And it's an absolute pleasure and honor to be part of this panel, and I look forward to a very much insightful discussion today.
Thank you, Buland. Welcome. Deepti.
Sure, thanks, Avinash, and very good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be in this panel. I, being a passionate person with respect to technology, it is amazing. So I'm in Ericsson. I head the cloud unit over there. I'm responsible for the 5GC rollouts with respect to cloud infrastructure. So 5GC, as you all know, Ericsson is one of the leaders in 5GC, and we have been working quite a lot with 5G. And what excites me best about 5G is how it is going to change the world for good. Not only few industries, but the world in all, right? We list down few industries which will change, but actually speaking, it is going to be all interrelated, and the whole world is going to change with that. It excites me a lot with the possibilities which 5G brings in. So great. Look forward to learn from all of you.
Welcome, Deepti. Anubhav.
Hello, hello everyone. Good morning. And first of all, sorry for I'm having bad throat, so we'll be quite low today in the discussion. Anyway, so I'm part of Tata Communications, and currently as an associate director, and majorly focusing on building private LTE and 5G network solution for different industry vertical, and limited to India, and as well as the global geography like US and Europe as well. And I'm coming up with the 14 years of work experience working in technology consulting and strategy in Deloitte, product management in Tata Communication, and very large scale wireless network rollouts during my days in Ericsson and Huawei. So that's about like my journey, starting from industry to management consulting, and now back to the technology. So has experience in developing strategy for adoption of next gen technologies, defining technology stack, and implementing various 5G use cases for multiple, or I would say different industry verticals, whether it's in manufacturing or retail or transportation and logistics. So we'll talk about it in the detail during the next course of discussion. Thanks all.
All right, welcome, Anubhav. Girish, we'll go with you next.
Hey Avinash, good morning, and thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to be part of this esteemed panel. Unlike most folks in the group, I'm not a networking or communications expert, but I've been in GE for the last 20 odd years, and today I lead the GE Healthcare Technology Center in Bangalore, and I also lead the Edison platform for GE Healthcare globally. I would say in a lot of aspects, 5G is going to be will have a profound impact on healthcare. If at all there is one one segment where you can start feeling the impact of 5G is going to be in the space of healthcare. A lot of opportunities we are seeing today in the case of ambulatory care, in ICU setups, right? We strongly believe that 5G is going to be a major transformation in the way we deliver healthcare in the next 5 to 10 years. Right? That is the impact we're expecting. And it's so well accepted today in the healthcare industry that GE Healthcare set up its first 5G lab globally in India a few weeks back. So we have a well-established 5G lab today within GE Healthcare where we can do prototyping, testing, validation, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things we have in mind for healthcare and how 5G is going to have a huge impact for us. So thanks, Avinash, and we'll talk more in details as we go into the final discussion.
Welcome, Girish. Mr. Vikram, we're just coming to you. We'll just go to Dr. Dinesh and just come back to you. Dinesh.
Hey, hi, good morning all. Thank you, first of all, thanks Avinash for the opportunity, and this is going to be a very interesting panel discussion where since I'm representing Philips Innovation Campus. I'm part of Philips Research. I'm a senior scientist. I have around 2 decades of experience in AI and vision area in healthcare area. So I'm more interested in probably discussing some of the facts, like in India, still infrastructure is a challenge, right? But in these challenging situations, how healthcare can really reach the rural via 5G technology, right? So I would be interested in this, discussing how we can really enable our India in healthcare, rural healthcare system. Looking forward for a nice discussion. Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Dinesh. Mr. Vikram, over to you. Vikram? Yeah.
Hey, folks, good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thanks. So, Brajesh, thank you for getting me on this platform. Really happy to hear the views on 5G so far, right? So, the time has come, right? The auctions have happened. The draft telecom bill got, put up on the DoT website day before. I'm going through it right now. So, the government's really being very deeply involved. Unlike in the launch of all the 2G, 3G, 4G so far, but the political attention to the potential of 5G and driving the government's digital first agenda is, bang in the center of focus. So there's a huge amount of expectation. So, the good news is that India is in the top 5 countries globally for 4G availability. So essentially 4G radios would be, upgraded, or the sites should be upgraded for the initial 5G launch, right? All our members are excited, both the operators as well as the OEMs. Ericsson, I noticed Deepthi, you should be happy. You guys have got a pretty good deal and you've signed up, contracts to roll out 5G. Now, the challenge is to get the equipment inside the country, right? And then actually roll it out, because you have to jump through a variety of, hoops. The trusted sources, trusted products, the mandatory testing, and, related legal intercept demonstrations and stuff like that. But, the combination of the India stack. So globally, let's say Sundar Pichai wrote to Donald Trump, hey, look at the UPI that, the number of transactions India has done. And actually, a service enabled by digital connectivity demonstrated the huge amount of, individual empowerment, the direct cash transfers, the UPI, the CoWIN application, and all that. So when 4G came and the marriage of the JAM Trinity, the Jandan, Aadhaar, and the banking, right? It really, and not just India, but globally, the world changed how you view transportation. Yeah, Uber, Ola happened. So the whole paradigm of transportation changed. Accommodation with Airbnb changed, right? Ola, whatever, Oyo rooms and stuff. So the potential of 5G, particularly to be exploited by great startups and people wanting to solve the country's problems. So you will have the digital network, you'll be able to transfer data across. But the essence of that will actually emerge. The cake of, the good part would be the startups start, making the data sweat. Unless you make the data ka pasina nikalna hai. I mean, unless you make it, give you a value. So that is what 5G will allow. And obviously for a developing country, or, India wanting this great, pole vault was the word yesterday Amitabh Kant used to deliver services to the people courtesy the 5G network. So huge potential. Now, all the people here on the call, I'm sure, are looking forward to actually creating and delivering some service. So with that, I'm sure there'll be more exciting discussions. Back to you, Brajesh.
Thank you so much, Vikram. Quick introduction of myself as well. So as you can see, I'm one of the founders of Global Talent Exchange. We come in from the talent perspective. We are a global tech recruiting platform, enabling talent across the globe to look at opportunities in India. We've helped companies across industries and sectors to look at global tech hubs for talent, and 5G happens to be one of the key areas that we have been working on. Apart from the other emerging tech areas, and we thought it'd be great for us to know what's happening here from a global perspective, from India rollout perspective. How's it going to pan out for the next few years here? With that, I would leave it to Professor Brajesh. Over to you, Professor Lal.
Thank you, Avinash. Thank you, the panelists, for the introduction and opening remarks. So I'll start with the comment that Vikram made. Very interesting. We have to make data sweat, pasina nikalna, and we are good at it. Making most of the last drop. People used to buy cars and say, "Ki kitna deti hai?" What is the mileage that I can extract from the car, rather than where all can I drive with it? So, so that of course is something that I am certain that Indians will be able to make do. The other thing that I noticed in this set of opening remarks was the optimism and energy I see in the users is more than the deployers. So I think the most optimistic and energetic was Girish. They've made a 5G test bed and they are looking forward to deploying more and more of 5G, which is very, very heartening, which is very, very promising. So all the others in the call should get extremely, extremely excited, because the users are right there waiting. So before we get into some specific technology and deployment related challenges, the first thing that I want an opinion from the panelists is, does the hype, the expectation, the touted potential of 5G itself become a challenge for 5G deployment and rollout? So a couple of words by each of the panelists on that, and then we start looking at something more specific. So is the touted potential and the hype around it and the publicity and even governments positioning themselves as 5G enablers, is all of that but in itself a challenge for a technology? Does it help it, or does it make it tougher for such kind of a deployment to happen? So I'm going to start with the order that I have in front of me. So Deepti, would you want to comment on this, please, to begin the discussion?
Sure, thank you, Brajesh, sir. See, basically, I do not see it as just an upgrade, right? 4G to 5G is not just an upgrade. It's a disruption which will come in the industry. Okay, so the hype which is around 5G is not fake, right? It is kind of very, very important. and what we are talking about is also very important, and the possibilities are limitless. But whenever there is a disruption, it is always a transition. It's not that today we have the spectrum license, tomorrow we deploy it, and day after we will have all enterprises using it. That is not how it will work, right? It's a disruption which will come in the industry, and it will take its own time, right? We cannot just say that 4G will be gone and we will have 5G everywhere and all enterprise will start using it. So it is going to be a transition. The hype is there, and it is for all good reasons, but at the same time we should expect it to go slow, right? It is not going to be a disruption in a day. In fact, it will take years to really come up to the full potential of 5G. It is just the beginning. We will see just the first part of 8 EMBB use cases to be there. But after that, when the actual URLCC use cases, the MTC use cases will come into picture, that is where we will see the real potential of 5G. So yes, get up for your seats, and it will take time. Yeah, that is what my view is.
Thank you, Deepti. That is exactly correct. It has the potential to live up to the hype. The only reason that I brought this question up is I think the expectations have to be set, because some people who would not know enough about the technology and what it is about might feel that it can do more than it can in a time shorter than it will take to make it happen. All right, thank you so much, Deepti. The next name I have on the list is no less than Vikram. Vikram, can we hear your views on this, please?
Yeah, so the thing is that, a couple of things that will require attention, and particularly as Deepti was saying, it's not like, I switch on the 5G radio somewhere and people are dying to pick up a service, right? So operators really have a challenge. Actually, if you see the global trend is not that ARPUs have actually risen substantially courtesy of 5G rollout. In fact, in South Korea, which was one of the earlier geographies where 5G was rolled out, people said, hey, I want to go back to 4G, right? And in fact, in India as well. There's a lot of juice still left in 4G. The fact is that because we were constrained due to availability of access spectrum, but more importantly, due to backhaul, right? Because you had a huge amount of data consumption. India is number one globally at about 18 gig per smartphone user, and the next nearest is South Korea, which is at about 9 gig, right? So on the consumer side, there is a huge demand and actual data being consumed, right? But the challenge is in the ability to pay up for it. So far, the good news has been, data costs have been kind of suppressed or have been pretty low. But what we are hearing is that initial 5G launches would be more or less priced at a similar price point as 4G, and then maybe slightly move up the ARPU today is below 200, and it has to go up to 300. Last two jumps in the ARPU was in December of 19, where about $25 all three people raised, and I think middle of last year as well. So the next big challenge actually is going to be the cost of devices. A 4G device is still pretty, a 5G device is still pretty expensive. So somebody, it is upwards of 10,000 rupees smartphone. And today, as on date, let's say at our India Mobile Congress, we expect a 5G launch announcement to happen, which is 1st to 4th. In fact, since I'm mentioning it, all of you must attend it. And Ericsson's the lead sponsor there, right? Okay, thanks, Deepti, for that. But a lot of 5G use cases will be demonstrated. Now, in the networks today, between all of our three operators, that's Airtel, Jio, and Vodafone, we would have approximately 15 million 5G enabled devices already latched onto the network today. Now, where are these guys? These guys would be, in the upper strata of a higher income bracket. So initial 5G launches are likely in central business districts or in areas where there is more. Although the government wants to announce pan-India, and there have been some announcements, but to my understanding, practically what will happen is that the service pickup would be in central business districts, and then slowly it will ramp up. Yeah. Of course, there are other related issues of right-of-way and fiberization. Maybe we can talk about that later. Back to you, Brijesh.
Yeah, thank you, Vikram. So that's interesting. So like Deepti correctly pointed out about the potential and the accuracy or the correctness of the hype, Vikram has brought some real numbers in front of us. So Anubhav, given your background as a consultant, do you feel there is a mismatch between user expectation and what 5G will be able to deliver at the rate that it can and at the cost that it can, and what it will bring back for the service providers? So that is kind of the question maybe as a consultant you could look at. So Anubhav, over to you for your comments, please.
Yeah, so I think I hear what Deepti and Vikram also said about this 5G hype and all, and very true. Even that is being even observed in the B2B market segment as well, and not about only in India, but it's a trend globally. If I talk about US or Germany, where the private spectrum is already available, dedicatedly available for the private networks, even the trend is same. And now coming to your question, like what are the user mismatch or what are the considerations generally the end user are expecting out of the 5G? So the expectation is very much clear. If I specifically talk about the B2B segment, they know that the benefit that they can get out of this, like let's say example, if I talk about manufacturing segment, they know that we are going to achieve our productivity, we are going to improve the efficiency, we are going to enhance our OEE, that is overall equipment effectiveness, right? So these are some of the KPIs that they generally measure. They are very clear in their mindset. But now when on ground, if I talk about, the challenge that they face is the first is the device ecosystem. So that is the first of the challenge, because currently if I talk about like healthcare, manufacturing, retail, so the device ecosystem has not yet achieved to that level that the devices are present or can be procured very easily at a nominal cost. First. The second is specifically if I talk about in India, the regulation from the government for the private network. So that policy is yet to be come in the in the public domain, very maybe in a year's time or so. So that is second. So they are keeping a kind of a wait and watch to take this benefit of the 5G and to implement on ground. That is two. The third is if I talk about, they are also worried about the capex and the opex, because currently if you see the business model of the B2B segment, they generally operate on capex plus opex model, and some of the enterprises generally are operating on the opex model. So it's a kind of a flexible model that they are following up. But now when 5G they want to adopt it, clearly have a mindset of the executives with whom we are interacting with, the heavy capex cost generally are deviating them in order for if I talk about the small and medium enterprises to achieve 5G. So these are some of the aspects that we see, and we are already formulating kind of a strategy, bringing some new business models so that the adoption rate even in India for the private 5G should not be a bottleneck. So I would rather say that. Thanks.
Thank you, Anubhav. Those were interesting points. We now need to move from telling people what 5G can do to actually telling them certain things that it cannot, so that once they get those services become available to them, they know what is the actual use of the technology. We thank you for that, Anubhav. Next, I want Girish to give his comments as one of the key users of the 5G technology. What are your thoughts here, Girish?
Yeah. So firstly, Brijesh, see, whenever there's a new technology which comes into the system, right, there's always a lot of hope, right? And with hope comes hype, right? So it's normal. If you go back and look at the last 20, 30 years of any innovation which has come in, there is a big hope and hype, and then it comes down to reality. The reality is when the rubber hits the road, the things might come back to normalcy. And if you look at the last 20, 30 years, the technologies which got hyped to such an extent and then suddenly died within a very short period of time, there are also technologies which actually thrived and survived, and so it could go either ways. But coming to 5G, I think Deepti covered it. It's not a new area, it's not an upgrade. It's more of a transformation, I would say, right? So that is one part of the story. The other part of the story is the demand versus supply. In the past, what happened is that there could be a new technology, and people don't see the demand for that in the industry, and people end up trying to force fit the technology into a problem which doesn't exist at all, right? And that is exactly where we feel things actually go down, right? Like for example, AR VR technology, we try to force fit in the world of service engineering, right? It was a force fit, and we could see after a year or so, after a lot of money being invested, we found that it is not viable from a cost perspective. It's not viable from a skill perspective because people are using it on the field, right? They may not be able to use it the way we interpret it. So you'll go either ways. But the good thing as far as 5G is concerned is that demand is very obvious, right? The need is very obvious. The problems are so compelling. If you just walk into I'm taking some healthcare background. If you go to any hospital, or if you go to any clinician and talk to them, and you spend 2-3 hours and ask them, what are your top 10 problems? I can tell you with a lot of confidence that at least 2 of them will point to 5G, right? And today in the post-COVID world, with everything happening with virtual care, remote patient monitoring, remote doctor visits, remote viewing, when you talk about anything, it's all virtual, right? In the virtual world, 5G becomes all the more important. Right? So I think technology hype, and then it's coming down to normalcy. The supply part, the demand which we have today is so compelling. I don't think 5G will go down that path. It's just going to be a very compelling story as we go forward.
Wonderful, Girish. So that is music to our ears. So thanks, because if people are looking forward to it, it's wonderful. So next, I'll request Ankur to say a few words. What are you thinking about this? Yeah.
Yeah. My view is these hypes are real, and I go with Girish in a way, right? I mean, the disruption can come much earlier than what we are thinking. I'm very optimistic on that perspective. There are problems. Everybody has, even from the operator or the OEM side, that pace of deployment has also increased over a period of time. People have learned the new technology, cloudification and stuff like that. Deployments rate of deployment is also much faster. The startup ecosystem, or what I'm seeing in India currently, is growing exponentially right now, and probably we just set up a highway for them, and they take it up from there, and that is where the disruption comes from, right? It can have different level of impact on different industries, considering the 3 major sectors: services, industry, and agriculture. But it is going to touch all of them. The amount it is going to touch might be different. The new applications of 5G are going to disrupt it much faster. I can visualize things are changing drastically within India in 2-3 years. Once the technology is available, even in the initial deployment, even if it is available in the metro, there are going to be certain models which are coming up, which can be replicated into urban or semi-urban areas quite fast. So I come from some semi-urban background from these things. Like, so ordering food online was never thought of in those areas just a couple of years back, or getting Amazon or Flipkart parcels in some rural areas was not thought of just few years back. Those things are going to adapt much faster. Small issues are there, as highlighted by the eminent panelists, but they are going to overcome maybe pretty quickly in India.
All right. Thank you, Ankur. So interesting viewpoint. Now we move over to Buland, Wipro. A couple of words from you, Buland.
Sure. So I think a lot of the fellow panelists have already covered a lot of points, right? And maybe some of these things might be repetitive, right? So hype definitely creates expectations, right? Been hearing a lot that 5G, it is going to revolutionize our lives forever, right? But at the same time, it is going to take time, right? And I think all of us agree. I would also agree that, yes, this pandemic has played a major role. The art of possibility has now increased. Disruption will happen at a faster rate today, right, than it would have been happened pre-pandemic, right? Because a lot of us, including the consumers, the enterprises, they have kind of accepted that, yes, this mode of digital transformation is important. This is going to work, and this we've seen it during the pandemic, right? So there is a lot of expectation within the consumer segment, a lot of expectation within the enterprise segment, with all the stakeholders as well. When I say stakeholders, we're talking about not only the carrier ecosystem, but also the hyperscalers who have started investing in this, the ISVs or the OEMs who are coming up. We heard about the startup ecosystem apart from the ODMs as well, right? And there are these enterprises as well who are wanting to create digital offerings based on 5G, right? The major challenge, I think, would be the investment and the ROI from that, right? Because there is also an expectation. We've been seeing a lot of reports floating around in the market saying 5G revenue will bring in so many $1 trillion of revenue and worth this market and all those things, right? And the expectation there is, especially around the enterprises and things like that, that once 5G is deployed, right, it will double or triple the revenue for them, right? So that is going to be a challenge to overcome, because that is not going to be the case, right? It is going to take its own time. We are still seeing at markets like South Korea, and what they are showing us is some of these metaverse use cases and some of these other things. But in terms of real, actual killer use case, which could be monetized, there is still time, right? It is still going to take time. And we should also look at some of the other technologies which where there was a hype in the past. Someone spoke about the AR, VR. Now we've been hearing a lot about metaverse, right? It's a new envelope around it. We've seen blockchain, right? While there are use cases which are coming around this, but we've seen those hype and versus the reality today. So that's my take on this, Professor.
Thank you, Bulan. That was very, very objective. And we have Dinesh left. Quick word, Dinesh, and then we want to move to the next question.
Yeah, I think I almost concur with the speakers already spoke, right? Especially the Deepti said, definitely it is a kind of a disruption, and it takes time for the transition. But I'll also concur with Girish, since we are from the same industry. So, but obviously, with this technology, many cloud-based AI solution can be deployed. And also some of that, to name some of them, as remote diagnosis, remote surgery, triaging, remote connection patient through home care, and anyone, anywhere can access healthcare they need. That is another point. And then, and we also tried with Nokia. We teamed up with Nokia and Philips. We tried some applications, ultrasound applications, and that's still work in progress. We are just exploring the 5G. Yeah, but however, I have one point. So people also say that the infrastructure rollout requires existing radio towers to be connected via optical fiber cables. So do we need to replace that? The work connecting towers could prove to be a huge challenge for the country, right? So that is my take on it. Thank you.
So you brought out another challenge related to making it a reality. Thank you so much. So what I hear from all the panelists is that the hype is real, it can easily be delivered. But what I hear and of course the users are looking forward to the technology. But one thing that sort of struck a note here was that possibly monetizing some of these deployments and some of these services is probably a work in progress as we speak. All right, so now let's move on to the rollout itself. And since this rollout is about deploying it in India, let us look at it from India's perspective. So now a couple of things that I want to put in context before I actually put the question forth to the panelists. Most of these technologies are built based on a requirement analysis of the people they will be deployed for. So, and a lot of such studies happen in the developed world, not necessarily in countries like India. So some of the capabilities that such technologies have the potential to deliver do not find an immediate application in markets like India. Now, that, of course, is a challenge that will need to be addressed as deployments happen. Are there so the question to the panelists is, in case their organization is working on deployments or building services, have they looked at India specific applications? If so, what are those? And if they have not, and which means that if they are not part of the creation of service process, do they think there are certain India specific applications that have not been per se addressed by the standardization in the way it was sort of written and created? So again, I will go through the same set of panels. The question, I repeat, is your company looking at this deployment from India use case perspective? Are they any different from rest of the world? And if so, does it make it more challenging or less challenging? And the second thing is India's true requirement being addressed by the standard, since it was based on a requirement study from countries outside of India? So I'll start with Deepti again. Over to you, Deepti.
Thanks, Professor. So it's a very interesting topic when we talk about India. India is a very unique market. Okay, not only from, and especially the pandemic has really brought in a different side of India as well. Okay, a few years back, we would have not thought of online schooling, and somebody just touched upon the delivery of food, delivery of things. So it's very interesting. Some of my cousins who came from US, when they saw our Zomato and Swiggy, they were surprised that how is it possible that you get deliveries in 10 minutes? Even in US, in most of the other places, you will not find this kind of use cases there, right? And when I say it's very unique, there are three things which are very unique about India. One is high volume of data and high volume of people using it. When I say using it, it is all the applications, right? Whether you talk about mobile, whether you talk about number of appliances being used, number of manufacturing being done, number of cities, the density of population, everything is very high. Second interesting part is we are very cost sensitive. Okay, so the main challenge with our partners, the CSPs who we deal with, is the ARPU, right? Though we consume a lot of data, we consume a lot of applications, we are 5G users to a big extent, but when it comes to ARPU, when it comes to cost sensitivity, we are a very unique market. Okay, we right now with 4G, the streaming, what we see on videos, 5G will give a very, very different experience. But we are happy with 4G, right? 90% of the population, 95% of the population will not want to pay extra for that quality of thing. So when it comes to India, the challenges are very unique, very cost sensitive. Infrastructure is a huge problem. So when I say a huge problem, spent a lot of money on the existing infrastructure. So to get them from that infrastructure to a completely 5G infrastructure is going to be a challenge. Yes, CSPs have started doing this and they want to do it, but at the same time, are they getting the ROI for it? Yeah, that is unless those enterprise application gives that ROI for it, it is going to be challenging to directly phase out 4G and go into an infrastructure of 5G. So I think India will be the load testing of 5G when everything is done. So I would place it that way. Very unique problems we have.
Thank
and
you.
or just one more point. And our organization has definitely use cases in other countries, because when we come to India, yes, the studies are started, but when we come to India, it's going to have a very different problem, and the problems are being addressed with CSPs. So we are partnering with giants of giant CSPs, giant mobile providers. And yes, the use cases have started, and we have started addressing those problems for the CSPs.
Thank you, Deepti. So that is good to know that, some of the things that might have been missed during the conceptualization stage are being taken care of now. Thank you so much for your comments, Deepti. Next, I would want Vikram to make some comments here.
Thanks. My electricity is gone off, but am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Just, as part of the, during lockdown, if staying at home, working from home, electricity went off, your Wi-Fi router had a challenge.
Unique problems in India.
That's a unique problem. Yes, Deepti, that's true. Okay. Brijesh, you mentioned about whether India's specific use case or India specific, I'm a little tired of hearing India specific. You see, when 5G standards are made, these are globally harmonized, right? The applications you can put for the service demand. So identification of what service, whether it is, a variety of what is mentioned about food delivery, or, in the Northeast, in some rural areas, I know a delivery is below because the mobile tower is easy to identify, right? In a rural area, nito gaon mein jao, there is no house number, right? Or if you go to some very, let's say, places like a Dharavi, or, I don't know how a delivery guy actually identifies the point of delivery. So such, subscriber or customer demand can be identified. But as it pertains to standards per se, telecom standards or telecom network deployment is from an engineering standpoint for capacity and coverage. When people talk of rural, urban, semi-urban, to my mind, it is about capacity and coverage. And how do you deliver that as an engineer, right? So it obviously it's more politically, savvy to say, hey, I'm delivering to a rural area, right? But as far as the network goes, it's about at the cost of repetition, coverage and capacity, right? Now, in terms of rollout or challenges to rollout, yes, the biggest challenge that we will have, as I mentioned earlier, is backhaul, fiberization, right? So there'll be huge amounts of data, on the access side being asked for by subscribers, but my ability to carry it back. The other thing, a challenge will be, we hear this whole term called edge computing. You call it edge computing, and there are more technical guys on the call. And I would, once we had an interaction with an Israeli company which provided this. Now, this edge, that compute power is going to be located physically where? Is it at the BTC? Is it at the BTS? Is it at the MSC? So physically, the compute is going to be done at which geographical lat-long position, right? And the OEMs or the managed service providers who typically provide the telecom service, like an Ericsson or a Nokia, or let's say a Samsung. Now, is it their engineers who will be managing the edge compute, or it is going to be somebody else? And one of the challenges that one notices is that, is kind of I'm examining is how do you service the edge compute or the operations and maintenance of edge compute, right? So maybe folks here have some idea about that. I'll be happy to hear that. But on these two aspects, back to you, Brijesh.
Thank you, Vikram. Interesting points. So specifically, why India specific? So that was an interesting take on the topic. Thank you so much for your comments, Vikram. So over to you, Anubhav. Let's hear your views.
Sure. So I think most importantly, sorry, if I see that considering the Indian market and the way the executives, the network executives, I would rather say, they are looking towards the 5G use cases. So I won't say that it's a kind of a completely a different viewpoint, if we go to a US geography or the Europe geography, more or less the requirement or the adoption rate or the outcome that they require out of these 5G use cases is more or less similar, until and unless if I talk about V2V use cases, which we know the type of connected cars in India won't be the type of traffic pattern we have. That's a kind of a different story. That's a kind of a different ball game. But more or less, if I talk about the typical use cases, those remains the same. And that is like I'm just telling you, basis my experience working as a consultant for Verizon, AT&T, even Facebook as well for US geography, and now started focusing onto my the India market. So so that remains the same. Having said that, and one more example maybe I can give you is like the standards which we have already been written. Like one of the requirement generally comes up of the location precision. So there are a bunch of use cases related to location precision, right? And in 5G, if I talk about the release 17 or release 18, where the location precision they have mentioned will be in few centimeters. That is the requirement of the in India as well as in the global market. So I'm just giving some examples, the practical examples. So now those use cases they want to adopt, but the releases or the equipment or the network hardware providers that they support release 16 or sorry, release 17 or 18, which are up to come. So that's how they will start adopting such unique use cases, get the monetization of adopting in the B2B space specifically I talked about. But more or less the requirement as I see remains the same until and unless 10 to 20% of the use cases generally varies basis the requirements from the consumer, and that will segment you into the B2C market. So it again depends on how we are approaching the B2B and the B2C requirement that somehow differ. Thanks, Vijay. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is good to hear. So what we seem to understand from the comments heard thus far, that technology is technology. There have to be tweaks for the market, but largely it is the technology in its current form that might easily be brought to India and deployed appropriately. Of course, we'll have to find use cases once it's deployed. For example, streaming becoming the largest application for 4G isn't something that was probably planned. Yeah, thanks for that. Now, next, Girish, as an actual user of the service, did you notice any change in the expectation of the Indian consumer versus consumers outside of India vis-a-vis healthcare?
Yes, I think definitely as Brijesh. But before we do that, I would like to step back and say where we are today, right? And how what are the alternates we have today, and how 5G is going to help us. So today we have two alternates. One is the 4G, and we all know, right? You can't use 4G for anything beyond telecommunication to a large extent. If you want to look at in a healthcare setup, it is very painful. But the other closest one is broadband, right? So today, what is the challenge we have with broadband? First issue we have is that there is a varying speed of broadband as we cross geographies, which is actually a concern today, right? That is one. Secondly, how do we take so today we don't have gig ethernets on the rural area, which is a huge roadblock for telemedicine. See, one reason why telemedicine hasn't taken roots today in India as much as it should ideally is because we don't have availability of gig ethernets in the rural areas, right? Third is, if you look at a hospital and you want to introduce, say, broadband, you have to do a good amount of cabling, right? Heavy cabling is needed to connect rooms like ICU, which is not acceptable for a lot of hospitals today, right? And more importantly than anything is a quality network is very critical for healthcare providers. From a healthcare side, we need high quality network. And when we say quality, a lot of people would confuse the bandwidth with quality. See, bandwidth is different from quality of service. So quality of service points to latency, reliability, packet loss, jitter, right? These are the four things together which define the QoS, whereas bandwidth is just bandwidth. So certain applications like remote monitoring and all, they actually need low latency, okay, which is so life critical for us, right? So this is the problem we're trying to solve today. So if you look at the use cases in the healthcare space around 5G, There are areas where 5G has no difference versus the rest of the world. For example, if you take cases like, say, robotic surgery as an example, right? Whether you do it in India or in the US, robotic surgery is robotic surgery. So no difference at all. Where we are seeing a huge difference going, same I would say, a lot of areas, I would say, if you look at telemedicine, for instance, I think there's a significant difference between how telemedicine is actually delivered in India as against in Western countries, right? Because of the infrastructure what they have today in the rural areas versus how it is in India. So there's definitely a distinction in the space of telemedicine. We are also seeing a big distinction in the space of virtual care, right? You have take for example Practo. So some of us use Practo, right? Today, when you want to do it in Bangalore, it is straightforward. You never even think about, oh, will it work, and so on and so forth. But hypothetically, assume you are in a remote part of state, then the connectivity becomes a major problem today. So these are very specific to India, or I would say emerging markets, I would say, as against the developed markets. So this differentiation has to be taken into account as we build technologies. If you don't get this right, Brijesh, my sense is that if you do not get some of these basics in control, it's highly probable that 5G will not be able to get to the full potential in healthcare as we would want it to be. So this is what I was talking about, hype versus reality earlier, Brijesh, right? So there could be a lot of hype that 5G would get into the last mile of healthcare delivery in remotest part of the country. Okay, but if the infrastructures are not in place and we're not able to address some of these challenges, it will just limit itself to tier 1, tier 2 cities, right? And then even today, Brijesh, look at the challenges we face today in India, right? So as a country, our biggest challenge today is that people gravitate from smaller towns and villages to big cities for healthcare. Okay, because you have the best specialist, you think, or in most cases you have the best specialist in a large city, you have best infrastructure in a large city, the best hospitals are in a large city. So people come from tier 2 villages to a large city. And what happens when people come is cost, right? So cost is very high. I think some of you might be surprised to know that 60% of a cost in healthcare is on travel and living. Because in India, when people move from a village to a big city, we don't come alone. We come with a father, brother, uncle, aunt, sister. We come with a full set of people, right? And then you come to a big city. You have to take care of living. You should take care of food. Okay, then you have people who have to leave their jobs for a period of time, say 2 weeks. You're taking a break. There's a surgery, taking a break, right? Or you're not well with some serious disease. You take a break. Not only you, your uncle, aunt will also take a break from work. The cost around that is at least 60%, whereas the healthcare cost is maybe 40%, right? So when we have 5G in its full steam in the years ahead, right, we are going to solve this because it's possible that the clinician could be somewhere, anywhere in the world, okay, and the guy can sit at a remote place and just do a call, and he can get good consultation from them, right? So I give an example. Yesterday evening, around 11 o'clock, my son had very high fever, okay, and I got into Practo at 11:30. I got a doctor from somewhere in Delhi, okay, who was able to talk to my son, okay, and understand on a video call, understand all the problems and prescribe medication. I went out to a pharmacy nearby. It was open till 1 o'clock in the night. Got medicine, and today has gone for an examination. Right. So that is the power what these things are going to get to us as we go forward. The third area is on training, Brijesh. Right. If you look at a lot of hospitals, like take example of Manipal, hypothetically, give an example. You have Manipal in Bangalore. You have Manipal in Salem. Right. Maybe we'll have Manipal in another part of a remote part of the country in the days ahead. Right. So we use when 5G is in full stream, it will be very helpful for training. You could have a very experienced radiologist or a technologist who will be sitting in Manipal, Bangalore, giving a training to a person sitting in a tier 3 city on how to use a CT system, how to scan a MR system, right? Or a clinician looking at a report from a tier 3 city and telling them, oh, okay, this could be a potential diagnosis for this problem what you're facing today, right? So there is all the power of 5G what we are going to see as we evolve in the delivery models we have today.
Thank you. Again, heartening words, Girish. So what I understand is that India does have some specific requirements, but that does not necessarily mean that we deploy differently. It will eventually solve the problems and take care of the differences which exist if they do. Yeah. So that is good. Thank you so much, Girish. Next, Ankur, your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, very interesting thoughts from Girish, and that has laid the foundation, like what our real Indian customers are looking forward from 5G. I mean, that's true. But at the same time, I agree with Deepthi when she made a statement like our Indian customers are cost sensitive. It's a cost sensitive market. That's the reality. All right. How to satisfy both these ends? That's going to be interesting. We are a cost sensitive market. Are we going to be a cost sensitive market going forward? Are we going to be cost sensitive market selectively? These are few questions in a way. And second point is the question regarding MEC, the point regarding MEC, Vikram made. That's a very interesting point in a way. So doing some computation at MEC and or at a edge cloud or the stuff like that, that bring some extra cost to the operator, and that translates further to the ARPU, further to the consumer, right? So it's a cycle in a way. Interestingly, 5G provides different from the key difference from 4G or the previous technology, that 5G provides selective use cases to be treated differently by the operator. So and the technology is more moving towards the softwarization in the cloudification. Deepti is a better person to comment on that. It's easy than before to change these things dynamically now. I mean, I'm coming from Rakuten. I mean, it's a complete cloud deployment, and which just happened in a couple of years. 97 of the countries just covered with the deployment, and it's over. It was told initially that it just cannot be done, and it is done in a new technology that is Open RAN. There was many question marks against that. Just there are so many problems with this, that, and all. But it's a working network with 97 of the geography has been covered. So, coming back to the very interesting point, what Girish laid out, right? My view of our customers in India is that they have tasted the benefit of the technology now with 4G. Now they want more. Now they want more. I mean, and they are ready to pay it selectively. If you are bringing some experience to me, if a student can just get the real experience of attending that class from home, or a patient can be taken care as well as the doctor is physically present near to him, maybe he is ready to pay. We pay if there is a benefit as a consumer. Otherwise, we just don't pay. That's how I look at it. Coming back to the original question, Professor, which you raised from the standards perspective, I think technology, 5 years of technology is supporting the required standards from for whatever is needed. It's selectively what we need to select that part. And from a global, it's a global village. We got to be interoperable with the open device ecosystem which we have. We cannot bring a new technology which just works in a silo. That will be further challenge. So these are my view on this part. Thanks.
Thank you, Ankur. Let's quickly move to Buland, because there are a couple of more questions I want to take up. Buland, your views,
Yeah,
please.
Sure. I think very interesting discussion and viewpoints. So what we are doing is, or what I believe basically is that, see, India is a very good market, right? We can build it in India and take it to the rest of the world, right? So while we are working with a lot of global customers on use cases, for example, when we pick up a use case in India, right, there are much more scenarios than what we would get in other parts of the world, right? And I'm talking about specific use cases which we are looking at in manufacturing, in healthcare, in logistics, right? At the same time, what we are also doing is, because we believe that while 5G will take some time due to its some of the challenges that we've been hearing, right? The challenges around deployment, device availability, regulations, and all those things. We started working with our partners on what can be delivered with LTE today in terms of use case. Just to give you an example, for example, I think Girish was mentioning about the challenge in healthcare today, right? we're working on a use case in healthcare to improve the inpatient experience. Right? And this was also born during the pandemic. And what we are looking at innovative ways of, can we work with the carrier ecosystem, look at some of the in-building solutions which they have already today, right? Place an edge over there. I think Vikram mentioned, where would this edge reside, right? So it would basically reside where there is a lot of data generation happening, right? Where you would want to place or put your AI models and things like that, where you would want to gain faster insights from this, right? So we are working in these kind of use cases using LT at the moment in India, and when 5G is ready and it's being deployed, it will bring in a new experience. It will open up new use cases, new scenarios within the same use case as well. And I think Ankur mentioned about the MEC cost, right? So how do we fund this, right? So because service providers are kind of struggling with realizing their revenues, which or the investments which they've already made in 4G, right? And with 5G spectrum and all those auctions and all, we are seeing it is going to be a huge struggle, right? So how do you fund some of these additional requirements which would be required as part of the whole value chain, right? So can they look at some of the new business models for MEC? For example, we've been hearing a lot about ORAN, right? And can you co-host some of these MEC components on the ORAN itself, right? Some of the workloads on ORAN. Hyperscalers are investing a lot in this. They are partnering a lot with some of these service providers, right? So hyperscalers are ready to fund this or get into a business model with the service providers where they could push their edge to, let's say, the network edge or the far edge location, right? We're also seeing that there might be a need for some kind of a gig economy model, like an Airbnb today, like a Uber today, right? So can there be Uberization for this edge or 5G services? And we do have a solution for this, right? We're working on, we kind of understand there is a challenge going to come with the introduction of some of these newer kind of devices, heterogeneous devices, in terms of your multiple edge compute coming from different providers, different AI models, different workloads and things like that. And it is going to take a complete lifecycle management to manage this, right? So we are addressing this as well. We acknowledge that, and we are addressing on this as well.
All right. Thank you, Bulan. And finally, Dinesh.
Yeah, yeah. With Philips, what we are trying to do is we have tried one application actually. See, India's situation is unique. I completely agree with this. You know, what we tried is we tried this handheld ultrasound enabled with the AI. Okay, AI, so that nurse or operator can operate the ultrasound and at the remote place. When we really tried this, what one of the bottleneck what we came across is a prenatal diagnostic techniques, that is Prohibition of Sex Selection Act, that is especially active in India. So this was a kind of a roadblocker for us. And you know, successfully we came out of that situation, you know, challenging situation, by tying that ultrasound, handheld ultrasound to the location. You know, since it's a kind of a handheld ultrasound, they can carry anyway, right? So that will be tracked. So in that way, that is one unique situation what we came across with respect to the Indian scenario. Otherwise, I concur with all other panel members. There is various data intensive applications, like both individual as well as a business to business model can be tried. And especially the AR/VR with video application will be very helpful in remote surgery assistance. So those are all my points.
Thank you, Dinesh. So what has happened here is that you know, the question was what are the challenges, and what appears is that possibly deployment of a technology which we started off by saying has not really been developed addressing India is not really a showstopper. What probably does is allows us to deploy or create use cases or solve problems that we did not think otherwise possible. So possibly it is not such a bad thing that we weren't part of the discussions on what requirements should be focused on. So these are all very, very positive and optimistic points. Now, before we go on and discuss something about talent availability, there's one more challenge that exists with any technology deployment, which is the ease and cost of the technology itself. So how easy will it be for the people to acquire this technology, to get all the peripheral support in terms of maintenance or spectrum or policy or regulation related issues? So is that a challenge really for a rollout in a country like India, or is that sort of taken care of? Now here I will change the order. I'll begin with Vikram and then move in the reverse, because with Vikram representing COAI, being the Director General there. So of course, he probably sees this more than any of us. So Vikram, could you start the discussion on this topic, please?
Thanks, Professor. This is about skills, is it?
Not skills yet, just the technology, so equipment, getting it from abroad, building it within India, the regulations, the policy, all of those challenges, or all of the enabling?
Okay. So, in December of 20, courtesy this whole imbroglio with China, right? You all are aware. So the government, put the brakes on that, and a new license condition came in called the National Directive for Security for Telecom Services, NSDTS, and as a license condition, right? So any telecom equipment in the licensed networks now requires to be procured only from a trusted source, a company who has been declared as a trusted source. And then that company has to file for the products that it wants to introduce. And those products are examined by a committee. And then these are declared as trusted products. So this whole process has to be, you have to submit a huge amount of details about the company, about the product, about the supply chain, the source of components and critical, particularly active components. So it's a bit of a pain actually. On one side you have this whole ease of doing business, and here is a huge compliance requirement. In fact, for MSMEs in particular, you see bigger companies have got a bigger regulatory mechanism. But for smaller entities to manage and find your way through this maze is a challenge, right? So now once you have the equipment as a trusted product, then you have to import it, right? Now the import, again, one of the things was that there is this MTCTE, mandatory testing and certification of telecom equipment done by the TEC. That is one more, chase, because that getting a certificate there is that you have to have it tested in an Indian lab, and the Indian lab ecosystem doesn't exist to the extent that is, required to comply with these instructions. So earlier it was not in a phased manner. It was one blanket MTCT. So from COI, we managed to get it in a phased manner. Initially phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and so far last month we discussed phase 5, right? But the phase 2 had serious challenges, so they deferred the date of compliance by a year, because we told them if we are not sure, we place an order on the OEM manufacturing factory in reasonable time, because that factory has to then source all the components and put it all together in the factory and then send that, the manufactured equipment to India. So yes, there's been a lot of work in the last 2 years on this, but still the actual proof of the pudding will lie when the 5G hardware actually gets rolled out in the next coming year. So there is a focused effort to give a prioritized approval for 5G network equipment, both by the national security team of the NSDTS, as well as in TEC, and within DOT, WPC giving you import licenses and things like that. So that is where skill sets of engineers to go and deploy this hardware as well. because so far, it was fairly simple. But now operators and network engineers will have to figure out what kind of MIMO configuration is to be installed in which site. Now, based on the MIMO configuration, the weight of the antenna or weight of the equipment varies, right? And then getting the towers to be structurally strengthened or boosted up to actually go and hang the equipment onto the tower. So there is work there, and the good news is that our OEM partners have got international experience of doing this, right? So because other countries launched 5G earlier, so the skill sets within, or the experience within the OEMs, we presume would be there. I'm not sure how how much of training amongst the Indian engineering, because a lot of this work also gets outsourced, right? And one interesting thing is, along with Nokia, we had actually launched, Nokia has a program called with NIIT for certification training, which is a Bell Lab certification training course on 5G, right? So that is one part of the skill set enhancement effort. And of course, now, everybody's excited to go and put up 5G. So the next 1 year, we'll see a lot of activity. Yes. Back to you, Brajesh.
Yeah, thank you, Vikram. Before I move to the next panelist, I want one more comment from you, Vikram. There's this issue of backhaul availability, or rather the lack of thereof. Is that going to play a role? So a few words on that, please, before I move on.
That's going to be a problem, because see, the thing is that what are the means of backhaul, right? The means of backhaul, you've got microwave. Now, microwave so far was not being allocated because the allocation process got tangled up, whether it should be auctioned or not auctioned, or how do you assign it, right? So for many years, we didn't get any microwave. The other backhaul spectrum, the good news is the E-band, right? Now, the E-band for backhaul, they have, some operators have picked it up, because there is no way in central business districts or highly populated areas that you're going to lay fiber on the ground. It has to be fiber in the air, and fiber in the air is E-band, right? That those radios and that backhaul has to be there. And my reckoning is, yes, that in the initial deployments, E-band would be put to good use, and there is a good let's say radio, or the ecosystem of E-band radios globally is pretty well established. The fiberization, while there is a dedicated effort by the government on right of way, currently in India we only have about 30% towers fiberized. But yes, there is a lot of attention to getting permissions granted, but the actual capex and laying it on ground, the civil engineering effort will require a huge amount of national, gati shakti kind of effort. So the government has understood it's a problem, because you go to defense areas getting permissions from forest, railways, so as part of the broadband mission, I don't know if you folks know, every state now has got a state broadband committee. And that state broadband committee, because the role of states and local municipal bodies is going to be huge for facilitating, the rollout of the network. So that's important. And another thing that I'd like to share is, along with TRAI, what our members did was, we did pilots in 4 locations. One was the T3 airport in Delhi, Kandla port as a port, and then we did Namma Metro in Bangalore, and Bhopal Smart City. This was to examine how you can deploy small cells on existing street furniture. So that again, because network densification, the network which is on the rooftops has to descend down, and it has to merge into street furniture and get inside buildings, because almost 70 to 75% of data consumption is inside buildings. So a deployment of the network inside the building, again, TRAI has a consultation paper on, and there will be huge scope as part of, design engineers to actually design and work with real estate guys. Okay, if you are selling an apartment or a condo with huge crores of rupees, right? And you're not giving me broadband. There was one guy, the person from the health sector was saying, it is not about the speed of broadband, but the quality of broadband. There's no reason why, the DLFs of the world or Mir Chandanis or, whoever is the builders, right? So we've had some conversations with Credai, but to actually, like even the Central Vista building here, TRAI had to do a consultation. Ki bhai, brand new Parliament House ban raha hai, is it plug and play broadband or not? Right. Similarly, the TRAI's own office is to shift to Nauroji Nagar in the WTO complex. And the chairman is very keen, So, in fact, I got a call from the army guys saying that there's a new Sena Bhavan a new, as part of the Central Vista complex, a new army headquarter building. And what would be the requirement of plug and play 5G out there? Similarly, Girish from GE Healthcare was talking about, hospitals, how much wiring you can do in a hospital, right? So all the equipment in hospitals obviously would be broadband dependent. But as part of the design specifications of construction of hospitals or public health centers, the in-building cabling, which facilitates broadband, should be part of the architectural specifications. If you don't do that, we will continue to have a challenge in actually delivering 5G services. I hope that covers it. So back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So what that tells us is that there are challenges, but the players are up to it. They've been looking at it and they are in the process of solving that. Good to hear that. So now I'll reverse the order. Thank you, Vikram. So we'll now move to Dinesh from Philips for his thoughts here.
Yeah, thanks. See, the challenge is in the infrastructure is, one example is the device chipset to enable waves, right? So need to be supported not only by an ecosystem of a traditional mobile brand devices, but also by an ecosystem that includes industrial devices of varying complexity on different spectrum bands. That is a challenge. So by mentioning this challenge, how this can really enable us, say, for example, in the Narendra Modi, implementing this Ayushman Bharat, where a lot of investment is happening in India with respect to the healthcare. So where they are trying to put CT, high-end machines, CT and MR machines at the district level. And so once we enable the quality of healthcare at the district and taluk level, and also the primary health centers in our India, so the radiologists who are sitting in the city, they can also read the images from the district. So that is the technology advancement, right, where this 5G also enables. So yeah, the challenge is about this infrastructure. Once we overcome this, then these ecosystems are still under formation, and it poses a challenge for the 5G service market. That's all I feel.
Thank you. So now, Buland, could you comment on how Wipro is sort of making it easier for the service providers to have the technology available to them for deployments?
Yeah, sure, Professor. So, so in terms of, hearing some of these challenges, and this is what we are also seeing, right? So there is a need for fiberization. Obviously, we cannot solve that, right? We are also seeing a need that with 5G and millimeter wave coming in, there would be a need for densification of devices, right? And one of the things which we are doing is, as I spoke about, the Uberization of some of these things. And I know Vikram spoke about the policy paper on the small cells, if it can go on to street furniture, right? And that is one area that we are working on. We are working on, can we bring some of these things, listing onto a marketplace, right? Which could be like a peer-to-peer marketplace, so that it gives visibility to the service providers and the carrier ecosystem, and whosoever wants to host any 5G edge related infrastructure to
Is it just me or we can't hear Buland?
KYC. Sorry?
I lost the signal for a minute. Please continue.
Yeah. Okay. So I was saying, so we are working on some of these areas where we could bring some of these hosting of 5G infrastructure a bit easier than what it is today. And we will need some support from the government and regulatory body there as well, as to how can we bring in those elements of enabling some of these things. And this would also help in the site acquisition as well, right? Because today the site acquisition for the carrier ecosystem is again a huge challenge, right? When they get into contracts with some of the sites where they host, right? Especially the IP providers, the infratel providers. For them, it becomes a lock-in, let's say for 5 years and things like that, right? So this kind of a Uberization would also help solve one of these problems. That is what we are working on. Third is the due to the softwareization, virtualization, and disaggregation of what 5G is going to bring in, right? It is again going to bring in a lot of complexity in terms of we are seeing different kinds of workloads which will come in, right? We're seeing the virtualization of the network, the disaggregation, right? So how we are seeing the entire 5G value chain coming along with 5G. It's not just 5G, the wireless piece, right? So how do you manage and operate them, right? So we are working on solutions to automate a lot of these wherever possible, right? Work on some of these management and orchestration layer, work on the entire life cycle of some of these and because again with 5G coming in, the surface area is going to increase, right? And if you look at the previous generation of technologies where we used to have some of these closed closed boxes as we call them, right? They were obviously much more secure, right, than what it 5G will bring, because we are talking about more openness coming with 5G, multiple players coming in, multiple starters, multiple device ecosystem coming in, right? So how are you going to ensure security across the board then, right? And then when you extend it to the enterprise segment, it becomes much more vulnerable, right? So these are some of the challenges. I think skill availability is also going to be a major challenge for.
Is it just me or did we lose Buland?
Yeah, I guess we lost Bulan.
All right, so we'll continue. So now he did start speaking on skills, and because we're running out of time, I will request Ankur, while he talks about the challenges related to technology, equipment, and enabling technologies such as backhaul, he also mentions a bit about challenges if they exist vis-a-vis talent in this space. Over to you, Ankur.
Thank you, Professor. Just a quick touch upon on the previous 2 points, and Vikram covered it in detail, and I agree to it completely. Both are pain points like certification and the transport fiberization. Just and when these problems gets kind of becomes more tougher when recently we saw the delay in the components from the supply chain point of view, right? So coming back to the skill point of view. I work for the standards team, and 5G, 6G standards, right? I find it very difficult to do the recruitment right now, to be fair, right? So it's not like in certain areas we do have skills available, and but at the same time there are few new upcoming areas where probably a set of skills we need to build, or kind of a standard participation in particular was not been the main area in telecom. Standard participation had not been traditionally the main area. It had been somehow centered around Europe to the greater extent, right? But it's changing now, and we are building the skills on those areas. I do see when I join different forums in ORAN or in 3GPP, I do see participation coming from India and Indian-based organizations, but volume is low, and some of these skill sets still 5G would require, I mean, there are many reports available that 5G is going to create so many jobs over a period of time, but in the areas of AI, ML, data analytics, and the standards that is very close to my heart, probably more requirement of the skill development within India might be required. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Ankur. So now we move on to Girish and hear what he has to say about this particular point. Girish.
Yeah. So can I again repeat the question because I lost you in between for a minute?
Okay, yeah. So the question was, I started out with asking about challenges vis-a-vis technology availability, equipment availability, enabling technology availability, and some issues related to policy. But then towards the end, I also said that since we're running out of time, could you also talk about talent, human resource availability? So if you could say a few words about these kind of challenges, which actually make it happen.
Okay, so I think for me, as far as the devices and equipments are concerned, one of the most important things, Brijesh, is the accessibility, right? The cost has to be very effective for us to have penetration. See, for example, if I want to take 5G to a rural market, right? It should be running on a mobile phone, or it could be a very small end device. If you're doing ECG equipment there, for example, or some basic point of care equipment. Okay, the cost has to come down drastically. It takes a bit of a time for cost to come down to a nominal level, because when you have scale, cost comes down, right? So we have to overcome that hump initially, where the cost would be not attractive enough from a business ROI perspective. So getting equipments at the point of care at the right price point, miniaturizing the whole hardware infrastructure, etc., is very crucial for us. That is one big thing I would say. The other thing, from a skill perspective, Rajesh, there are two kinds of skills I would talk about, right? One, the people behind the behind the scene, and the people who are going to use it, right? The people who are going to use our equipments today, I'm talking more from a healthcare perspective. As we get 5G rolled out, the end user are supposed to be people who are not technologically savvy. Okay, if you expect that the person who's going to use the system has to have good technological skills, they should go through a 2-month training course, it's not going to work, right? So we have to totally abstract the technological complexity, okay, of usage of these 5G based solutions from the end user in a big way, right? Because our fundamental assumption should be the guy has no idea what technology it is on. Just like the way if you go to if you look at folks who are not from technology background, right? Say a carpenter or somebody of that profession, they use mobile phones so easily, right? I don't think they've gone to a training school to understand how to operate a touch screen and how to connect to Wi-Fi, or how to connect to Bluetooth and so on. So that's one thing has to be. The second one is the people who are behind the scene. There is the middle layer expertise, right? So one thing as we go forward, we're going to see more and more, Vijay, should be the vocational courses, what we have, schools, what we have, right? ITIs and universities, etc. We already see. In fact, I'm part of few academic boards in few institutions, large institutions, and they are trying to get in 5G skills and 5G technology into their curriculum, even as we speak. Some of the large universities, right, asking us feedbacks on how 5G is going to help and what kind of course curriculum we should have. So I think that's also going to compensate from a technical skill perspective. I think we should keep all these three things in mind for us to have accessibility, higher adoption, and better penetration of 5G technologies into the tier 2, tier 3 segments.
Thank you, Girish. Thank you for your summary on the issues that I spoke about. Next, we have Anubhav. Could you please comment on this very, very important deployment related issue?
Sure, sure, Brijesh. And I just switched off due to the bandwidth issue, to be very honest, the video, so that the connection remain intact. No. So, but I'll just take your question and divide it into two parts. The first, you asked about the challenges of the deployment and also very basic things. I think some of the aspects have been already covered, but just want to stress on two aspects. The first is the getting the certifications from the government while importing the network equipments and all. So that is, we are facing like it's a kind of a tedious process as of now, getting the whole set of certifications, which takes from weeks to months time. as of now, and thereafter you get the equipment get imported in India. So those kinds of the process has to be streamlined, what we feel. And apart from that, another point on which the the TRAI and DOT is already working on, the regulatory aspect of the spectrum. Although the spectrum auction has been already taken, but the specifically what the other countries have already done the spectrum allocation for the enterprises, which they directly can go to the DOT and get it aligned for their enterprises to deploy the 5G spectrum at a very nominal cost. So that policy or the regulation is yet to come, and that will give a boost, I would rather say, to the enterprise or the B2B segment in India, considering the way it is already revolutionized in the other part of the world. So that is one. Coming back to the regarding the skill set that you asked, Professor Vijesh. So what I feel that is like fulfilling the promise of this advanced wireless initiatives, particularly those involving 5G. And we know that this involves a complex ecosystem of players, which include like application, cloud providers, wireless carriers, consultants, integrators, equipment manufacturer, and so on and so forth, right? So generally enterprises are choosing best of breed solution, but still they face a great deal of complexity on ground, and they need to coordinate the efforts of multiple parties. And besides their own in-house team, if you say that the enterprises have their IT teams and all that, but still they are looking towards the cloud providers, network technology vendors, consultants, and wireless carriers to help them weave together and orchestrate the different pieces so that the complete ecosystem comes together, and the 5G network can be stitched together and be plan, build, and operate seamlessly for the enterprises. So that is one. And what I feel, there comes our role, where as a Tata Communication, we are providing such services into for the B2B segments, which includes like plan, build, and operate as well, so that they do not face such challenges of the skill set to manage the network, to bring the right folks onto the on ground. So that is one. Apart from that, if I talk about the technology aspect, then the architecture of 5G networks is expected to become more virtualized, open, programmable, and which allow like best of breed components to proliferate, right? And again, the role of orchestrator plays an important role. So net what I'm trying to say here is that it's a different the complete ecosystem needs to be built up, needs to be managed up, which requires like a enhancement of their existing skill set, what we see for the B2B segment. But nevertheless, the complete skill set they cannot achieve, and that is where the roles of the other players comes into the effect. Thanks, Vijesh. Over to you.
Thank you, Abhinav. And Anubhav, and finally, Deepti, your comments, please.
Okay, I think we have very insightful comments from everyone, and one very interesting perspective somebody shared was with respect to the user perspective. We talk about resources, but yes, training people also who are the users is going to be very important. I would just put these challenges into three brackets: policy, process, and practicality. Right? In policy, we cover everything, right from government policies, certifications, as well as manufacturing things. We saw in the middle, because I belong to cloud domain also, we had a huge crisis of servers in the middle, right? We were not getting servers to deploy. So those kind of challenges are going to be there. Okay, processes, specifically in India, there is a lot of focus on 5G and smart cities and all. We want to digitalize India, but at the same time, our processes are very, very complicated. So to simplify them is going to be a very crucial part of bringing digitalization, bringing 5G in India. And then practicality. We spoke about we don't have numbers to the houses. We spoke about density of population. We spoke about our towers being everywhere, and it is going to be so difficult to get those things in place. So practicality is also going to be challenging. And at the same time, when we talk about practicality of skills, it's a new thing, right? We don't have ready-made people in the market, ready-made skills in the market. We hired 200 people in last 1 year. It was difficult because earlier we used to have 70, 80, 90% match. Now we have 50, 60% of match because people do not know. It's a new skill. So to train them, to skill them, to get the best out of them is not easy. So those kind of challenges we all will face. Yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you, Deepti. Yeah, so that's an interesting perspective coming from one of the key resource user, human resource that is. Okay, before we go to the closing statement of the panelists, Avinash, would you want to give your perspective on the talent availability from the recruiter's point of view?
Absolutely, Professor. Thank you. Wonderful insights from all of them. Certainly, yes. I mean, the scale and the speed of technology adoption in India makes it very, very unique. The kind of use cases that are kind of going to be deployed here versus some of the other countries, the scale I think is kind of completely different. So it makes it unique. The challenges are different. But I guess, if all stakeholders come together, some of these challenges certainly can be overcome. When it comes to talent, essentially in the, mid-senior level, areas where we're talking about the hardcore technologists, that is where we have been seeing a massive gap when it comes to, technology deployment or the know-how of the technology, right? So our idea is to be able to tap into different pools across the globe to see how we can, bring them in to India. Of course, our platform, the only reason our platform exists is, to help NRIs look at opportunities in India. And 5G happens to be one of the core areas. I'm certainly excited in terms of what 5G has to offer, all of us in the future, etching to kind of get onto it, the thrill, the speed that you can really enjoy on your phones and etc. But markets like, Europe and US are going to be key areas in terms of human capital availability, and we are tapping into these markets to be able to get some great talent back home. So would be happy to kind of connect with you in person sometime to talk a little bit more in detail about the demand here and how we can kind of engage further, Professor.
Thank you, Avinash. So that is the other perspective, about how people are actually proactively looking for good people to come work here in India. And even though we hear that there is a gap, but everybody is geared to fill that gap and make sure that it does not become a showstopper. So that, of course, is very, very good to hear. Now, finally, before we close the panel, I would go around and request each panelist to give their closing statement, and I'll repeat the order that I have in front of me. So a closing statement from each of the panelists, please. You've given us very, very insightful comments, given us food for thought, and now some closing statement is in order. So I'll start with Deepti. You first, please.
Thanks, Professor, and thanks GTX for having this. And I think this kind of panel discussion will really trigger a lot of insights, a lot of innovation also in a way. My closing comments, yes, 5G is bringing a lot of possibilities. Let's gear up for that and ensure that we tap in all the possibilities as soon as possible. That's all.
Thank you, Deepti. Vikram.
Hi. So it's been a very interesting discussion, and particularly good to get the views of folks who are, from the health sector or, the consultants and all. So, I mean, in closing, the point is that, there'll be a huge amount of investment going in. The challenge for 5G, essentially, I visualize as we've two things that I would request, in whichever forum you go to. One is we've requested the government to come out with a broadband readiness index of states. So the DOT has done some work, but I would urge you to push it in whichever forum, because unless, it is a bit of a name and shame lean on, so that when you do a happening Maharashtra or come to Bengal, so, the investors would possibly be encouraged if they see, okay, where do you stand in the broadband readiness index of states? I would actually go down to cities or, further down, but at least to begin with states. So DOT did some work, but I think it's better if the sector regulator TREI does it, because DOT maybe, other states might object that the government of the day is kind of, maybe credibility wise, I think TREI would be a better bet, right? The other thing is that to have a digital readiness of different vertical sectors, right? Because unless your agriculture sector or the health sector or logistics or transportation, unless you are digitized in the work that you do, you will not be able to write an AI or an algorithm to provide you a service pertaining to milk delivery, right? Or to let's say apples from Himachal Pradesh going down, right? So essentially, what I say is, as an engineer, it is output by input is the efficiency. What 5G will allow you to do is reduce the cost of inputs and thereby increase the country's efficiency in doing so. But that can only happen if you are digitized across sectors. So with that, thanks, guys. And Brijesh and organizers, I'll need to take leave because the minister is holding a press interaction on the telecom bill. So it's been a pleasure being with you, and I'll excuse myself with these last words. Thank you very much, and all the best for the 5G efforts. Bye for now.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you for the comments and thank you for your participation. Let's move on to Anubhav then.
Thank you.
So I think I would like to thank, first of all, the GTX team who I think connected with me on LinkedIn, shared their thought that what are their vision actually for this discussion. And to be very honest, this discussion turned much more as per even beyond the expectation. To be very honest, the thoughts that came up from the healthcare, from Vikram, and the summarized version that Brijesh you shared with us. So overall, it's a great discussion with you, and looking forward to definitely connect or in near future as well with each one of you. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Anubhav. Girish.
So again, Brijesh, thanks to you, and also would like to thank Shanita and GTX team for the opportunity to be part of this panel discussion. As we leave, I want to leave with a note that the potential of 5G is tremendous. Okay, in the future, without doubt, I don't think anybody has any doubt in their mind that 5G is going to transform the way healthcare is going to be delivered. It will be such an extent, Brijesh, that 5 years from now or 8 years from now, maybe even 10 years from now, right? We will not be able to even recognize the healthcare systems we have today. There is a kind of transformation we expect 5G to bring in the space of healthcare. More around delivery, accessibility, right? Improving accessibility, improving productivity, focusing on outcomes, right? I don't know how many of you know the third largest cause of death in the world is medical errors. Okay. After cardiology and oncology, the third cause of death is medical errors, right? We will see that with 5G, with experts being available across the globe at a disposal, right? You're going to see a lot of medical errors going to come down drastically because of that. So quality of life will improve. So 5G is going to be a huge catalyst in the way in which healthcare will be delivered in the years ahead. So we look forward to that. It looks very bright and a lot of opportunities in front of us. Okay. Thank you. Over to you, Avinash.
Thank you, Girish. Ankur.
Thank you, Professor. First, I would like to thank GTX team, Avinash and Sharnita in particular. Thanks for conducting this session, and thanks to you, Professor, for conducting this session so well. And thanks to all the panelists for their insights. My closing remarks will be, I'm very, very optimistic about 5G. I mean, I'm very excited at the same time. I see so much excitement startup ecosystem. I see so much expectations from different services sectors, and I'm I'm very hopeful that after 5 years within India, we are going to see a different India, and 5G is going to play its role in doing that. So very, very hopeful, and very hopeful that 5G is going to reach to the all the geographies, all the areas within the country, so that the guys who could not have that accessibility to the doctors or any other services from theirs, and they will get timely assistance. That's my view on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankur. Buland?
Yeah, sure. So I would start with saying that challenges are going to be there in any major technology adoption, right? And but these would also bring out some of these opportunities, which will actually push us to innovate and bring out new solutions, right? As I said earlier, right, so 5G is going to be an ecosystem play, and if we are able to manage this ecosystem, bring them together, a lot of these challenges can be mitigated, and we can move on gradually with this, right? And I would agree with all the other fellow panelists, like future is going to be bright with 5G for sure. And so thank you for hosting us, GTX team, and Professor Lal for orchestrating it so well. And I would also like to thank all the panel members for sharing their thoughts. And there are a lot of takeaways for me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Buland. And finally, Dinesh.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for GTX team for organizing this event, and also thanks Professor Brijesh for moderating this event. This was one of the very good panel discussions that I participated in recent past. Okay, many insightful comments were discussed. I'm sure government organization and companies will enable R&D centers to make use of the 5G benefits and opportunities to overcome the challenges with the workaround solutions. Yeah, so yeah, that's all. Those are all my closing remarks. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you all the panelists for some wonderful talking points and ideas for thinking and taking them further that you have given to us and to the audience. And I thank GTS for organizing our panel in a very, very interesting area. In the closing, what I find is that yes, challenges do exist, and they normally always do with everything that is better than what used to exist. But there is none that we are not in a position to overcome. So that is extremely, extremely positive. And finally, both the providers and the consumers are very, very optimistic about this technology. So this is really, really looking up. Thank you, everybody, once again, for your comments and for your insightful comments and thoughts. Over to you, Avinash, for the closing.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you indeed. All the panelists here, like I mentioned, really insightful across spectrum, and a lot of stuff for us to kind of look forward to. I'm especially looking forward to the IMC, which is going to happen on the 29th. Hope to see some of you there, and of course, we will have many more such sessions going forward. We would like to keep you in loop for all of these discussions, get your perspective, insights. We also have a technology game changers group on LinkedIn, where a lot of experts like you come and actively participate in terms of sharing and asking questions. We'd urge you to be a part of that group and contribute and learn from one another. So indeed, lovely having you this morning, this Friday morning, and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you once again on behalf of GTX, and thanks Sharnita for getting all of this together. Thank you, Professor.
Everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everybody.
Pleasure.